This is Chris Hayes, the host of All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC. Poll after poll after poll indicate that registered voters remember the economy and just about everything else under President Trump as being much better than under President Biden. And Donald Trump has the audacity to point that out on a campaign trail, and MSDNC can't have that.
But recently, while repeating the argument at a campaign rally in New Hampshire, Trump revealed a really amazing tell.
Were you better off 5 years ago, or are you better off today? No contest. There's no contest. Nobody would say today. What a difference a president can make. It really does make a difference, a big difference.
Son, you notice what he said? 5 years. Are you better off than you were 5 years ago? Now, he's obviously referencing the iconic line from Ronald Reagan that helped him clinch the presidency in 1990.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Candidates have been using the "are you better off" line ever since, and so here comes Donald Trump, and somehow it's 5 years instead of 4.
Chris Hayes is upset that Donald Trump is allowed to reference the period before the global pandemic that affected the entire world and that no country responded to perfectly, and wants you to forget, needs you to forget, that the economy was great under Trump's first 3 years in office. So he's essentially comparing 1 year of Trump with 3 years of Biden.
We're going to show you some charts. And here's the thing about the charts, all right? Generally, you want the good stuff to go up and the bad stuff to come down, okay? So this is how that looks. Let's just start with GDP, gross domestic product. That is the measure and the value of all goods and services produced in the United States, right? It's the size of the US economy. And like the rest of the world, we saw a significant drop. See when it goes down there, the constriction, that? In GDP in 2020. That was the pandemic. That was under Donald Trump's watch.
So on one hand, Chris Hayes admits that the entire world's GDP was affected by the pandemic. But then he's like, it was Donald Trump's fault.
Jobs have really bounced back. Labor force participation rate, that's the percentage of people who are in the labor force, really increasing steadily from the COVID era lows, right? It hit lows during the pandemic, and then it goes up.
But look where he starts. In January 2021, the labor force participation rate was at 61.3% and goes up to 62.5% in February 2024. However, what Chris isn't showing you is that the labor force participation rate was higher under President Trump. So as you can see, they can't and won't compare Trump's entire first term to Biden's first 3 years, because overall, things were generally better under Trump.
New business applications. This is people starting businesses, which is, the American dream. In 2023 alone, Americans filed 5.5 million new business applications. That was a record high for the year. In fact, that was the third year in a row of record-breaking applications for a total of 16 million.
Wow, does that mean that 16 million businesses were created? No, it doesn't. Because first of all, they're applications. We don't know the approval rate. And only a third of which are for employment-generating businesses, i.e. businesses deemed likely to hire employees. The White House's own Council of Economic Advisors explains that not all applications to start a new business are associated with future job growth. Some applications are driven by gig workers who newly choose to formally associate their own labor with a business, or by individuals who file a business application to realize tax advantages of temporary federal business tax policies implemented during the pandemic.
Manufacturing is also booming thanks to a flurry of Biden-signed legislation. More and more goods being produced in America again, bringing good-paying manufacturing jobs back into the U.S. See? See how that goes?
Look at the line, you plebs! That means Biden is better. But the reality is that they're not booming. If you actually compare manufacturing under the Trump years to manufacturing under the Biden years, you'll see that they're pretty similar. And at their peak, Trump's numbers were higher.
Hospitality jobs, in particular, have bounced back after plummeting after the pandemic. Again, not a given the industry would recover fully post-COVID. You see it go down here.
And it's good that hospitality jobs have largely recovered, but the number employed in the sector were slightly higher under Trump.
The number of passengers flying on U.S. airlines this is the summer of 2020, right? In the depths, up to now July 2023.
So according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, in July 2023, the number of passengers on US airlines hit 76 million, while in July 2019, it was 78 million. Again, higher under President Trump.
Across the board, and this is key, wages are rising. Rising faster than inflation. I mean, wages rising in real terms, okay? Workers now make an average of more than $34 an hour.
But overall, from the beginning of the Biden administration, inflation has outpaced wages. See the blue line? That's wage growth. See the orange line? That's inflation. And inflation outpaced wages from April 2021 to April 2023. But that brings us to now. While in the last year, wages have outpaced inflation, overall under Biden, real average weekly earnings are down by 4.2%, and cumulative inflation is up 18%. Chris Hayes can show you all the lines that he wants, but he's not going to convince Americans that the economy was worse under the bad orange man than it is under Biden.
Another thing we're doing in the last 4 years, we're producing more of our own energy here in the US. Crude oil production, basically no one in America knows this, so listen closely. Crude oil production under Democratic President Joe Biden broke records last year.
This is a chart of US field production of crude oil. During Trump's first 3 years in office, oil production increased by 46.3%, from 8.87 million barrels to 12.98 million. Under Joe Biden's first 3 years, production increased by only 19%, from 11.1 million barrels to 13.3 million. I would also like to point out that the record high month of oil production under Trump was 13 million barrels a day. Under Biden, it's 13.3 million, which is a whopping 2.458% higher. Wow, are you impressed yet? But none of this matters, because everyone knows that for years, Joe Biden and his Department of Energy and the Department of the Interior have been doing everything they can to stifle energy production in the United States, shutting down pipelines, slow-walking permits, canceling oil and gas leases. The only reason monthly production is slightly higher than it was under Trump is because when Joe Biden begged Saudi Arabia to produce more oil, they basically told him to F off.
Renewable power is booming. Renewable power generation is also up amid President Biden's $370 billion investment in clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act.
So there's no explanation as to what the numbers on the line graph are. I have no idea what this means. And you can't say that the numbers are up, considering that the last point on the graph is trending down. Also, how is this squiggly line booming? It looks unstable.
Inflation Reduction Act, remember that? Remember they named it that? Not necessarily because it was an inflation bill, but because of this chart. Inflation, this is the whole story of the last 4 years in some way. It's the reason I think that Joe Biden's faced political headwinds.
Yes, that's what happens when you sign a climate bill that has nothing to do with inflation reduction and then call it the Inflation Reduction Act. The American people don't like being lied to.
But look at this, since then, right? It has come way down.
It seems like Chris Hayes forgot the premise of this exercise. You see, this is where inflation was during Trump's last year in office, and this is where it all went under Biden. This is lower than this.
The unemployment rate has also dropped massively after hitting an unprecedented spike of nearly 15% in 2020, right? The same story in the chart. Bad things happen in 2020, and then they get better after Donald Trump leaves office.
Democrats are the ones that shut down the economy, but, it's Trump's fault. Got it.
In the past year, amid all these economic improvements, mortgage rates, which have risen quite a bit as the Federal Reserve hiked rates, have started coming down as well, which is welcome.
Again, Chris Hayes isn't going to show you what was happening under Trump because it was better. Interest rates for a 30-year fixed mortgage are currently hovering around 7%. And we're supposed to pretend that the super lows under Trump during the pandemic didn't happen? And according to an analysis by Zillow, a mortgage payment on a typical US home has nearly doubled since 2020. 4 years ago under Trump, a household income of $59,000 a year could comfortably afford the monthly mortgage on a typical US home. Under Biden, that number has risen to over $106,000. In other words, home affordability was better under Trump. But look at the line!
We're seeing gas prices drop. Remember this story from a spike at nearly $5 per gallon in the summer of 2022? People going around putting on their Joe Biden stickers on gas pumps, saying, I did that. You don't see that so much anymore because we're now down to a little over $3 per gallon.
So gas prices are a little over $3 a gallon. Just a little. I mean, if you consider 39 cents a little.
They start up here, they go down there.
Gas prices are not dropping. They have been rising since the beginning of 2024.
We're seeing gas prices drop.
So far in Chris Hayes' segment, he's misled and or lied about GDP, unemployment, new business applications, manufacturing, air travel, inflation, oil production, mortgage rates, and gas prices. So it should be no surprise that he's going to lie and mislead about violent crime.
And finally, and this is the one conservatives love to get wrong, one we're obsessed with here on the show, there has been a big decrease in violent crime under President Biden. 2020 was one of the most dangerous years in America in a decade under Donald Trump. Violent crime spiked around the country. It spiked in both urban and rural areas.
I'm trying to think what happened in 2020. Can't put my finger on it.
But in every year of the Biden administration, violent crime has come down.
Look at the line! But seriously, what does this all mean? How much has violent crime actually come down? Well, let's try and look at the numbers. According to an FBI press release, there were 1,326,600 violent crime offenses in 2020. In 2021, that number decreased 1% to 1,313,200. For 2022, the FBI's press release doesn't show the estimated number for some reason, but it says that in 2022, violent crime decreased by 1.7%. So let's do some math, subtract 1.7% from 2021, and that gives us 1,290,875. Now remember, the spike in violent crime in 2020 was because of the perfect storm of COVID, the defund the police movement, and politically coordinated social unrest. But Chris Hayes blames it on Trump, and he knows that that's BS because he's giggling about it.
2020 was one of the most dangerous years in America in a decade under Donald Trump.
In other words, Chris Hayes thinks that violent crime is funny. Nice job, creep. Anyway, for posterity, here are the FBI's violent crime stats for 2017, 2018, and 2019. Now, as you can see, according to the FBI, violent crime under President Trump's first 3 years are lower than Joe Biden's first 2 years. And you might be asking, where are the stats from 2023? Well, those numbers haven't been released yet and won't be available until at least fall of 2024.
In fact, according to the latest estimates, 2023 is on track to have one of the lowest violent crime rates in half a century.
But there's a problem with that 2023 estimate. It doesn't seem to exist anywhere. In fact, neither do any of the numbers on his violent crime graphic. Chris Hayes' numbers are off by tens of thousands compared to the numbers that I pulled from the FBI website. And to make matters worse, the FBI's 2021 and 2022 estimates are based on incomplete data, because in 2021, the FBI changed its data collection methods. At the time they released their 2021 estimates, only 52% of law enforcement agencies had submitted 100% of their crime data. In July 2023, the Marshall Project, a left-of-center media outlet, reported that only 44% of all police agencies submitted 12 months of crime data in 2022, and 32% of all police agencies did not submit any data to the FBI. The Marshall Project also points out that several large police agencies, including New York, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Suffolk and Nassau counties, and Miami-Dade County, had not reported and or partially reported their data to the FBI.
So compared to 4 years ago, when Donald Trump was president, these are just the facts, okay? The country is safer.
But even if you take Chris Hayes' numbers at face value, they're still higher under Joe Biden than they were under pre-pandemic Trump. Democrats can try and tell the public that America is safer all they want, but the public isn't buying it. A record amount of Americans describe the problem of crime in the United States as extremely serious or very serious. And what Chris Hayes isn't telling you is that no matter what magic estimate or number he pulls out of his ass, the FBI's crime stats under Joe Biden are going to be flawed due to a reduction in reporting by law enforcement agencies, which in turn led to very patchy crime data. But then again, reality has never stopped Chris Hayes, let alone anyone at MSNBC before, so it's par for the course, I guess. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. A very special thanks to Sean Fitzgerald, aka Actual Justice Warrior, for taking a look at all my crime data. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. If there is a next time.